The Telehandler, a Class 7 rough terrain powered industrial truck. Like all powered industrial trucks, they have specific laws and rules that must be followed. Anyone using them must be trained and authorized before use. These unique machines can lift up to 10,000-pound loads and extend outwards 30 to 40 feet. They can also tilt the load left or right to balance the load equally or to align the load to where they can precisely set down or dump the load. The steering options on the Telehandler allow the operator to choose up to 4 types of steering: front-wheel steering, rear-wheel steering, 4-wheel steering, or crab steering. Most telehandlers are 4-wheel drive. There are some that are only 2-wheel drive. Make sure you know the options on your telehandler. All these options make the telehandler extremely versatile. Be sure to follow the operator's instructions in the manual and instructional signs. Keep a copy of the manual in the cab of the vehicle for reference. Telehandler operators must be aware of their surroundings and all personnel working around the telehandler. The safety of all persons in the work area is absolutely the most important part of any job. The telehandler operator must be competent in all phases of understanding the machine. The operator must have good eyesight, including depth perception, and an understanding of hand signals. No one under the age of 18 is permitted by law to use the telehandler. Some of the optional accessories for the telehandler include outriggers for stability when picking up heavy, long, or odd-shaped loads. Other options include heat and air conditioning in the operator's compartment, a jib boom, and rear riser for the boom. Foam-filled tires are also options. Some telehandlers come with a liquid blast in the tires to add additional weight to the truck. If you use water in the tires, check with your supervisor about the type of tires on your telehandler. Using all these boom options can help in the setting of material and large items at the edge of the work area. As required by law, the telehandler must be inspected prior to each shift. The operator should check the engine's oil, water, hydraulics, and for signs of wear on all moving parts of the machine. This inspection should be recorded, and all malfunctions should be reported. This should also include a visual inspection of all lights on the telehandler. Check if the lights are working and if they are set to place light on the work area. Operators should be very familiar with approved hand signals, which are the same signals used for rigging and crane operation. Make sure all co-workers know and understand the hand signals. Included in your inspection should be the steering of the telehandler. Make sure you have the correct steering selected for the job you're about to perform. Ensure that all hydraulic circuits are fully charged prior to operation of the vehicle. It's important to conduct a visual inspection of the worksite to determine potential hazards, especially during pickup, transport, or drop-off. Potholes, irregular terrain, mud holes, piles of material, construction debris, snow, and water are just some of the terrain obstacles that may be present. Foam-filled tires that meet the manufacturer's recommendation are preferred over the pneumatic tire, since a tire blowout while transporting or elevating a load can cause the load to drop or spill. In addition to checking a job site, check the vehicle. A quick walk around is essential to ensuring a safe operation. Adjust the forks for the job you're about to perform. Make sure that the area around the truck is clear of any obstacles. It's recommended that the instruments and gauges are checked upon vehicle startup and while the vehicle is warmed up during normal operations. To lift a load properly, the operator should first set the forks to lift with a 24-inch load center. A 4-foot wide load would have its center midway under the 2 forks. If the load is perfectly shaped, it may be equally balanced on both sides. The chances that the load will be balanced at the first lift are good. However, if not, do not lift until it is balanced. An experienced operator will spread the forks as required to balance and lift the load. When lifting a load, it is not the time to take shortcuts or rush the job. If the load is improperly or unsafely stacked, the load may have to be restacked. Remember that loads may be lifted to a variety of elevations and positions. All loads, such as drywall, bricks, lumber, trusses, concrete block, or any other construction material, should be matched with the right machine. Inside the cab of the telehandler are lift charts. Be sure to follow the information on the charts. During training, the trainer will explain these charts for each attachment. Remember, there are charts for when the outriggers are up and charts for when the outriggers are down. Always make sure you are using the correct chart. In order to use the charts to determine the load capacity, you must use angle degree of the boom and the indicators on the boom. Most booms use letters as indicators instead of numbers. If yours has numbers, they are not the feet the boom is extended. They are just a mark like the letters to find the capacity on the load chart. The combination of angle degree and boom extension tells the operator how much maximum weight can be lifted to that point. Sometimes a dry run must be made to determine how much load can be lifted to a certain height and angle. If the weight of the load exceeds the capacity of the truck, do not lift the load. It is your responsibility to know the weight of the load. If you're not sure of the weight, information should be available from the delivery driver or your supervisor. Do not lift a load you don't know the weight of. It's against the law for you to do so. From time to time, when the load or attachment must remain above a structure for a long time, there is a risk that it will rest on the structure due to the jib descending or slipping, which is caused by the oil in the cylinders cooling down. Regularly check the distance between the load or the attachment and the structure, and readjust the distance if necessary. Never lift any load with just one fork. Your capacity is reduced, and it may result in a turnover or other dangerous position. Before transporting the load, cradle it slightly backward to nest it against the back of the fork's attachment. During transport, remember, anything that increases momentum is dangerous. Speed, turning radius, acceleration, or braking, if not done slowly, will increase momentum. Use the mirrors on the telehandler to check for blind spots when turning or backing up. If your speed or momentum is severe enough, this could create enough load shift to cause a problem. Any load shift, especially at an elevated position, can be a serious work hazard. When operating the vehicle with a load and you're going up or down a ramp or grade, the rule is drive up, back down, as long as your vision is not obstructed. If you're driving on a ramp or grade without a load, drive down in the forward position and reverse up a ramp or grade as long as your vision is clear. When transporting a load, the law says to keep it as low as possible, consistent with safe operation. It does not specify feet. Depending on the terrain, it may be best to carry it 2 or 3 feet off the ground. The rule is not to hit anything with the load and avoid bottoming out during any bumps or dips in the terrain. Be careful when crossing culverts or muddy crossings, where wheels may slip and create a hazardous load shift. If you're traveling up or down a ramp or a grade, 20 inches is the maximum height from the ground. When operating in a ROPS, which stands for Rollover Protection Structure, the law requires the seatbelt to be fastened. In the case of a rollover, the operator should stay seated, grab onto the wheel, and not attempt to jump out. If towing a trailer, make sure the trailer brake coupling is connected and turn to the on position. Since the telehandler can lift objects high into the air, always follow the Msad when working around overhead power lines and other sources of electricity. The Msad should always be covered in your training. Of course, never park a vehicle on an incline, even if you apply the parking brake and shut off the engine. Never allow riders on the outside of the vehicle or inside the cab. The vehicle is designed to carry only the operator and no one else. When shutting down the engine, let the engine idle for a couple of minutes to enable the cooling liquid and the oil to lower the engine and transmission temperature. This will protect the vehicle and engine parts from damage. Here are some guidelines for unloading material. Drive the load close to the structure where you'll be unloading the material. If parking the vehicle alongside the structure, use the crab steering capabilities, if the machine has that feature installed. When the vehicle is properly positioned, set the parking brake. Before elevating the load, level the frame. Many manufacturers provide hydraulic cylinders that allow the frame to pivot from side to side in relation to the axle. This is an important feature. So always level the frame before elevating the load. Never level the frame to reposition an elevated load. This can cause a change in momentum and load shift at the worst possible time. With the transmission in neutral and the parking brake set, start elevating the boom to the required height. Always determine the boom height first and then the boom length. If attempting to set the boom length first, the leverage of boom would reduce the load lifting capabilities. The operator should carefully extend the boom to the deposit location and follow hand signals from fellow workers if available. Once the load is on the deck, uncradle the forks and lower the load. Then loosen the forks from the load and retract the boom. Even with coworkers sending hand signals, the responsibility of the load is still the operator's. Experienced operators pay attention to when the load is down and supported and when the forks can be safely retracted. The two front wheels and the rear axle pivot point form a telehandler's triangular base. The rear wheels are not part of the base because the rear axle typically oscillates. As long as the machine's center of gravity remains oriented inside the stability triangle, the telehandler remains upright. The center of gravity is the point in 3 dimensions around which the machine's weight is balanced. By adding a load to the forks while the boom is down, moves the center of gravity forward and down. Raising the load will move the center of gravity up and to the rear, while at the same time causing the stability triangle to shrink. The higher you lift a load, the fewer margins for error you have because the stability triangle becomes smaller. A small stability triangle leaves less room for the center of gravity to wander left or right if the frame is not perfectly level. Imagine the center of gravity as a plumb bob hanging from the boom. You'll always find the center of gravity somewhere on a perfectly vertical line between a point on the boom and the center of the earth. If the frame's not level, the center of gravity will not be oriented over the machine's center line. But the stability triangle is always aligned with the telehandler center line. With the boom extended and the outriggers up, the stability triangle is very small. The frame only has to be slightly out of level to make the center of gravity drift to either side of the triangle. The laws of physics are as certain as gravity. The moment the machine's center of gravity moves beyond the boundaries of the stability triangle, the telehandler begins to tip and will overturn. A safe lift starts well before putting the boom in motion, or even before the operator assesses the site for hazards. Most of today's telehandlers are designed with a quick attach coupler at the end of the boom. Before installing an attachment, be sure it's approved by the telehandler manufacturer and that the specific capacity chart is in the operator's station. Telehandlers are designed to handle rough terrain, but that doesn't mean they can be driven without regard for the terrain. Risk of tipping or load loss is much greater when traveling on slopes and rough terrain. If you must drive on a slope, keep the load low and proceed slowly, while exercising great caution. Before you get on the slope, downshift to a lower gear, and if your truck has either four-wheel drive or engine braking, use them to help control the telehandler's speed. Avoid turning on a slope, but if you must turn, make the turn as wide as possible, and use caution. Never drive across excessively steep slopes under any circumstances. Ascend and descend slopes with the heavy end of the telehandler pointing up the incline. When there's no load on the forks, the counterweighted rear of the machine is the heavy end, so you should back up slopes as long as your vision is not obstructed. When the telehandler is loaded, the front of the machine is the heavy end, so you should back down slopes. Again, a clear line of sight is important. The more experience you gain with the telehandler, the more confidence you'll have in the handling and feel of the equipment. But don't become overconfident, because when you start cutting corners, you'll find the telehandler can be a dangerous machine. Don't take chances. Do your part and follow the law.